My name is Renuka, and today's episode is called Harmony in Diversity, Singapore's Cultural Tapestry. Singapore is home to a kaleidoscope of traditions and heritage that is coming from several communities, traditions that have passed from one generation to the next. But beyond that, on the surface, we do see a number of communities, and we know that there is this binding thread that runs across these and binds the people of Singapore together. Today, our panelists come from diverse backgrounds, and yet they collaborate on projects, they share experiences, and they contribute to foster that unity across several communities that form Singapore. Without further ado, let's go and meet our esteemed panelists for today. And introducing you to our panel for today, the first one is Dr. Alicia Eltor Farong, Deputy General Manager, Ray of Hope. Our second panelist today is Mr. Anbara Surajendran, CEO, Singapore Indian Development Association, SINDA. And here comes Ms. Nilanjana Sengupta, author, latest book being Chickpeas to Cook, that dwells on women of micro communities of Singapore. And last but not the least, here is Dr. William Warren, a senior consultant, Singapore Kindness Movement, TEDx speaker and author. I just cannot wait to get into this discussion. Welcome to the panel. Thank you so much for being on Montage of Singapore.
It's great to be here, Renuka. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Renuka.
My pleasure, completely.
Great
All
to
right.
be here.
Thank you, Dr. Wan. I was waiting for that. All right, I'm going to go straight into this very important topic. Yeah, in Singapore, we talk about communities, we talk about the unity, we talk about, oh my God, how do all these communities live together without, anything that we hear in terms of what's happening. But now, what I want to know is, Dr. Wan, you've been in Singapore for a few decades now. So how have you seen Singapore evolving? No, I don't mean anything about your age.
It's okay, Renuka. I'm used to it. I tell you what, having been born here, raised here for many years before I went abroad,
Yes.
My childhood, my teenage years, my early professional years,
Right.
I thought it was wonderful, simply wonderful, because I have friends from all races, from the Indian community, the Malay community, the Eurasian community, of course, the Chinese community. And I can tell you, we lived in harmony. I mean, I can speak for myself. I mean, we joke around, we were pulling each other's legs, we're eating together, we're celebrating each other's festivals, we were visiting each other at our homes, we were playing soccer together, we're playing games together, and we have great conversations together. And I didn't feel like, that I'm Chinese, you're Indian, and you're Malay. We're all just one people. We're Singaporeans, right?
True.
But I think today things seem to have changed. We have a lot of immigration, people coming in. If you stand in the street corner, you begin to hear different dialects, different languages.
Yes.
Even among the Indians, we have different dialects being spoken or different languages of the Indian continent. So, I'm sure my colleagues here will have something to say about that.
Of course, and since you mentioned Indians, I'm going to dive straight into Anbu.
Yes.
Anbu, tell me something. He mentioned about those good old days, the
Yes.
simple days, right? Have you also seen your simple days turn a little complex? in
Yes,
last
the
few
simple
years?
has become more complex, but it's for the good thing, because when we were, but when I was growing up, it was just Indians and
Right.
just like what Dr. Wan said, we had all our other friends and all those brothers and sisters. But within the community, the migration pattern wasn't that great. It was still a limited migration, so it was
Yeah.
still homogeneous.
Yeah.
But when we started to become a global city and when we started to become growing in great length, we had a lot of brothers and sisters from India joining us, and it was and it is still a good thing because we bring in a lot of culture in, we bring in a lot of aspirations in. So with that, our local community also begins to travel together. This journeying part is very good. So I think overall, this migrationary pattern is very good. I think we shouldn't be over troubled by one or two incidents and everything. In totality, the Indian community is diverse. All of us are aware of that. We are okay. We are okay to eat a thosai one day, eat a pan puri another day. It's okay, and all of us have learned to do that, and that's the beauty of the community, right? And each community is different. Our community is like that, and we are very happy about that. So it's going well. Nothing to worry. We are doing good. We are doing good.
I should add, Renuka, that while you're talking about the Indian migration here, we shouldn't forget that the Chinese migration is just as significant in the last 30 years or so. And again, among the Chinese, we've got Northern Chinese, we've got Southern Chinese, we've got Chinese, although they all speak the same language, which is called Mandarin, we are culturally within ourselves, subculturally different. I think we must also remember that.
And frankly, that brings me to my book, Renuka.
Yes.
The reason why I wanted to do it, because while we hear of the majority communities, the Indians, the Malays, the Chinese, but we don't really hear that much about the others. That's just 1% of the Singapore population. And what happens within these micro communities? These really small, for example, the Parsis, that's just 350 families.
Yeah.
So what is their culture like? How do these women live their very, very, very challenging lives? How do they balance Singapore, which is so modern and so fast paced, with their traditional energies? So that's what I wanted to look at. And let me tell you, without giving too many spoilers, that it's actually a very different picture of Singapore that emerges.
Oh, wow.
So that's very interesting. It's a great, again, like Anbu said, it's a great journey to be on because Singapore is constantly evolving.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what I derive from, what you guys just said, that in terms of the evolution, it's all happening. We're all realizing it. And it's happening across all communities and even the minorities.
Yes.
So I think to delve that deep into the minorities and that too to women and seeing how they survive within this larger landscape, it's amazing. And we're all happy. As I see, this panel is extremely happy about the evolution. I'm going to go to Dr. Elisha. Thanks for being so patient, Elisha.
Anytime, Renuka.
So you've been listening to what our fellow panelists have to say about the evolution in communities, right? So I was wondering, that as the communities evolve and different things happen, Singapore evolves, and then come these established organizations that sort of look at people in general. They do not divide people into communities. So how does Ray of Hope really make sure that a certain community doesn't feel left out in your fundraising initiatives, right?
Great points, Renuka. So thanks for asking about Ray of Hope. We are a crowdfunding charity. And so we started that way looking at the needs across the board. So whether you're a migrant brother, an ex-offender, a low-income family, we'd be able to reach out to you across racial, religious divides, no issue, as long as there's a need. I think the interesting thread for me that connects with a lot of what our esteemed panelist has shared is that we've evolved and we are evolving from a needs-based approach to a strengths-based approach. And for us, that's also the next step. Crowdfunding and channeling fundraising monies to low-income families and to our clients is just one step.
Yeah.
And beyond that, there are other things that I guess we'll be speaking about as well, like volunteering and partnerships and I guess the collaborations that many of us already do. So I'd be excited to talk more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. We should talk about that as well. But I want to now go back a little bit to Dr. Wan. Dr. Wan, tell me something. In your experience, right? And I'll talk specifically in terms of kindness movement as well. Have you ever felt that communities in general do not want to integrate? Or what kind of challenges have you specifically faced in bringing communities together, say for a nationwide program such as yours, right?
Well, in my experience, I found that many communities are actually very interested to help and work together and integrate. I don't see people as resisting integration. What I do find is that people do not know how to integrate or they are afraid of the sensitivity. They are afraid as the complexity increases, the sensitivity also increases so that we begin to be wondering, am I using the right words? Am I asking for the right things? Am I asking the right questions? Am I being offensive if we do this in our integrative effort? So I think there's quite a bit of education needed in those areas. Now, as far as kindness is concerned, I really believe that kindness is the golden thread that would bind all our communities together, whatever we do. Because if you think of kindness simply defined as being other centered, then you're beginning to think about, it's not so much what I want or what I think, is so much about understanding the other person's perspective, asking the question what the other person wants,
Right.
and how can I do something for the other person to set the other person up for success. And then when you're other centered, then we are being kind.
And of course, Dr. Rana, what you just said about the kindness movement, bringing the communities together, I totally agree. But it must be quite a challenge to force people to be kind. And why must we really do that? Nilanjana, you wanted to say
Yes,
something.
I
so
actually
tell
wanted
me.
to kind of share my experience. I think it was very different from what Dr. Wan said. There was a bit of inhibition, Renuka, before they started really opening up,
Right.
the women from the micro communities, because we need to remember that we are walking into very private space out
Yeah.
there. And trust building is very important. And like Dr. Wan said, I think we need to learn the language of sharing as well. So it took a bit of time. And I'll also tell you another story. This is, after I had submitted my manuscript, and one of my publishers, she is otherwise a very typically Singaporean woman. She works and she is very modern. And that's when, after she read my story, she came up and told me that before her daughter's PSLE exam,
Right.
she had actually gone to Malaysia and done an animal sacrifice as a part of her worship.
Yeah.
So, what we need to, I think, remember at this point is that everybody has that private face and the public face, and we need to identify and we need to accept both. That becomes important.
Which is true. And
Yeah.
that brings me to the point, Anbu, that,
Yes.
in one way, what Nilanjana just said is that we are struggling.
Yeah.
We're struggling between what we have been all these years
Correct.
and where we are going with all this immigration around us. And when I say struggle, a lot of people mention the struggle between the local Indians and the expat Indians, right? There is some kind of a discomfort somewhere. I'm not sure if you agree. If you don't, I very well respect that. But if you do, or you've seen something,
Yeah.
would you like to share?
Sure. I think there's 2 points to it. One
Right.
is the lived experience.
Uh-huh.
For the locals here, I mean, this is the only culture they are exposed to. So they're fine.
Yeah.
But for those who are coming from India or any other
Uh-huh.
country, their lived experience is totally different.
Totally.
So when they bring that lived experience to Singapore and they try to merge with it, that's where the frictions come about.
Oh,
Because
okay.
that lived experience doesn't fit into the Singaporean lived experience. So there's the initial struggle there. But what we need to do as a local community is provide opportunities for them. I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
We know that the Singapore Jain Society or the Jains is a very small community there. So when they approach Sinda and say that, hey guys, we want to do something good.
Yeah.
We want to be kinder. We want to make sure that it's not only about us, the less privileged also needs to be helped. So we worked with them, and we know that the Jain community, they have a strict dietary controls and
Yes.
everything.
Yes.
So the point is, how do we come to a win-win situation? So when we asked them, what can you offer? And said, we can do many things, but it must be meaningful.
Yeah.
Then we said, okay, is Diwali or Deepavali, and we all eat laddus, and then why don't you make the Jain version of the laddus according to your customs and in your dietary controls and everything? So they said, okay. So someone in that community who's very good in making laddus came up with a recipe, healthy recipe, because we all want to be healthy Indian community, right? So it came up with a healthy recipe, shared with the whole community,
Yeah.
and everybody had strict control on how to do the food safety and everything. Everybody, the grandmother, grandfather, the children, the parents, everybody did. And every year, we've been giving out to the less privileged. So
Yes.
their point is, if we want to do, we must make an effort.
Yes.
And we're not talking about one or two laddus. We're talking about hundreds and hundreds of laddus.
Wow.
And we are doing this for a couple of years. And when we give the laddu, it's not about the Singapore Jain Society.
Right.
It's from one brother to another brother
Whoa.
with love.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
love.
I love that. I totally love that. What I don't love is that I didn't get even one single laddu. So we'll come to that later.
Available anywhere across the world with the app Radio Masti 24/7. The 24-hour station offers a vast variety of programs filled with local, global and Indian content along with Bollywood gossip and updates. Make sure you add Masti to your lives. Download the app today and stay energized and connected on the go. Radio Masti 24/7 Live, Singapore's only Bollywood radio since 2009.
Alicia, coming to you, I saw that finger go up, just like a student in my class. So tell me, what are you?
Like you, Renuka. I was also wondering where was that invite, Ambu? Feeling a bit
Yeah, me
excluded.
too.
Where's
It's
the
coming.
love?
It's coming.
But also, on that point, it's wonderful to hear that there are these community collaborations going on, right? And on the topic also that Nilanjala mentioned, building up trust. The Ray of Hope experience has been, and also it's because we're a small charity, a small-sized charity. Trust building takes time, and it's not always easy to scale.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it really is understanding and going deep. So one thing that we do with our Malay Muslim families during Ramadan is they host volunteers from the Ray of Hope community to go over. So it's really an open house to break fast together, which is a wonderful way for 3 to 5 volunteers. They could be Muslim volunteers, but they could be everyone else from the community to be able to get together and understand more the religious element and the cultural and social element of why this is important to them during this time.
Wonderful.
Yes, the challenge is scaling.
Not
and so
easy.
we can't.
Not
Yeah.
easy at all. So now I have a laddu lined up and I have an invite lined up.
Yes.
Nilanjana, what do you have for me?
No, no, actually, I just wanted to add to what Anbu was saying.
Yes.
And he had this lovely, the visual that emerged was different generations coming together, the grandparents, the parents, as well as the children. So, how does that work? I would like all three of the panelists to think of it, that how do cultures actually get passed on by generation? Because in today's date, I know from experience of my daughter how disinclined she is towards anything that is very ethnic or anything that is too religion or culture based. So, how do we actually help them to learn not only about their cultures but about the cultures around them as well?
I have a story to tell about
Yes,
that.
please.
All of you have been speaking about kindness, actually, whether it's food sharing, whether it's trust, whether it is acceptance of a minority within a minority culture. We're talking about kindness. So some years ago, together with the Roses of Peace, that were trying to promote religious harmony, we had a big makan, together for breaking fast, and that breakfast was actually sponsored and co-created with the Muslims, and we invited all sorts of people from all religions, and we had a big sharing of the breakfast, and it was so fantastic because for the first time, many people didn't have any idea about how Muslim break fast, and they experienced it, and they were sitting next to Muslim people, and we were eating with our hands, and we were having such a great time. That's a wonderful way to show kindness to each other. Acceptance, respect, openness to learn about each other's culture, and willingness to eat together.
Lovely.
And maybe perhaps, not tolerate but empathize.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
No?
Yeah.
That's
And I think
important.
food is always that binding
yes,
factor,
yes,
right?
yeah.
So once you
Yes.
have,
Yeah.
and Singapore, I tell you, the last
I
season
know.
of Montage of Singapore, that was our question to everyone. What will you miss if you were to leave Singapore, right? Everyone said food. Finally, on the 7th episode, we had to tell them, guys, please don't tell me food. Tell me something else. But food is, what brings us all together in Singapore. And now I'm just going to go back slowly to that direction.
Okay.
And I want to ask you, Anbu. They're talking about trust. And nice brand placement there by Dr. Wan. It's a kindness. So tell me, why do you think the challenges really exist in the first place? And if they do, how do we overcome them? Because I was an immigrant a few years ago. Now I'm a Singaporean here, right? And I've nicely blended and I'm so comfortable talking to everybody. But even today, and I always quote this, even today, when I'm in the lift or even I'm walking outside, I smile at people. People don't smile back. I try to be kind to people. They just look at me as if, I want something from them. They're doubting me. There's this lack of trust. So what really does a foreigner do in this country to feel a part of the whole tapestry?
Actually, if you ask me, it's not only about the foreigners.
Uh-huh.
Even as a local boy, we also have this kind of discrimination,
Okay.
But we don't call it a discrimination. It's
Mhm.
part and parcel of the Singaporean lifestyle, We grew up, there were things which were unpleasant being a minority,
Yeah.
but we didn't take it to heart. And we just moved on. And, within the friends, we joke and everything. But one of the things now, which is like a bit difficult for everyone, is the oversensitiveness of everything.
Mm.
And it doesn't help with this social media. If you look at it in a broader perspective, all the communities are doing well. We
Yeah.
help each other. There is no big issue, but it's just that one case which comes out in the social
Yeah.
media, it just
True.
makes over glorifies that there's some issues with the community. Actually, no. If you look at it, everyone is playing a part. When people decide to move to Singapore, they are moving here not because of the career. Most of the time, they want to make this their next home. So this concept of this is going to be my home entails all other things. And we know that just because of 1 or 2%, it doesn't make that everyone is wrong, is it? But where the issue comes again is how do they reconcile their lived experience? When they bring their experience from whichever country they come from, let's say from India,
Yeah.
and when they try to blend it to Singapore, I think that's where the conflict arises. And to them, hey, this is all right, because the last 30 years in India, this is what I was doing.
Yes.
True. So what you're saying is that resetting expectations when we move from one country to the others is very important. That's how you're open to new ideas and everything, right?
Exactly, Renuka.
Perfect. Nilanjana, you had something to say. I saw
No, a
that
very
finger.
small story, Renuka. I was driving in a taxi at the beginning when I came here,
Uh-huh.
and he was asking me how many friends have I made, and I said not too many, and he said something that I feel is very important, that I think you need to look more approachable. And I think that's a very important takeaway, that when we move to a new country, we need to adapt a little more to the country,
Very
and
true.
also be conscious about how they perceive you.
I
Absolutely.
agree
That's
with
a
that. Yeah.
great point brought out.
Hmm.
In fact, the taxi drivers are really a window to a
I
country's
know,
culture.
I know,
Aren't they?
yes,
There's
yeah,
so many things
yeah.
I've learned.
Yeah.
And we have this very quiet panelist. So, Alicia, I want to understand a little bit more about the ground level reality. When you have volunteers coming from different communities and volunteering for different communities, is there a challenge there where you see that, you must have a one-on-one similar connect between the recipient and the volunteer? Or
I
not
would say
really?
not at all, Renuka,
Uh-huh.
because from the Ray of Hope experience, volunteerism really is a language. And just like sports, just like music, when you say you're a volunteer and I'm a volunteer,
Yes.
it's anchored on a certain set of shared values already. So that in itself identifies us and builds up trust.
Wow.
So if I had to, just give a suggestion for
Uh-huh.
someone who's new to town, a newly arrived expat,
Yes.
I'd say seek out opportunities to volunteer. When I was in my 20s, much younger days, I was a volunteer actually with Cinda's Project Read. And I found that for me transformative as I, journeyed with two little kids, on their learning journey, throughout childhood and then teenhood. And I'd recommend that for everyone. Yeah, in fact, at Ray of Hope, what we try to do is to lower the barrier to entry for those who
Yes.
want to volunteer.
Uh-huh.
Our experience is if you ask, if people know there's a need and an opportunity, they actually will step up.
Very
And
true,
I
very
brought something, if I could share, if you don't mind.
I have been looking at what's there. What has been hiding?
It's something very close to my heart.
Okay.
It's a gift from a migrant volunteer
Wow.
who came for one of our cricket matches that we organized
Wow.
on mixed teams of local players as well as migrant brothers. So he actually regularly plays on Sunday with his migrant
Wow.
brother team. And they're called the Singapore Indian Cricket Club here.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he did one specially for me with my name. And I treasure it
Aw,
so
that's
much
Very nice.
because he's appreciated our event that he joined in 2022. He came back as a volunteer in 2023 to
Ooh.
man a kiosk, a games
Wow.
booth, and now volunteers very regularly with Ray of Hope.
Oh.
And in that way, we get to learn about him. He sends me good morning messages,
Oh.
which appreciate and send my friendly emoji back. But in a way, volunteering binds us, and we don't always need the language or the
does.
words to do
Correct.
it.
Certainly does. And you know what? You're not the only lucky one here.
Yeah.
So when I was volunteering and I was becoming very close to the dorm workers during the
Yes.
COVID, and even after that, I got this hand-painted sketch on my
Oh.
birthday.
Oh.
Yeah. And I have it all there in the Radio Musti studios, right there.
And such
Signed by
wonderful,
him.
beautiful
Yeah.
reminders that we're
Yeah.
so much more than
It
how we are
is.
categorized and defined by a
Absolutely.
system.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
Actually, if you look at what Alicia has said, it is all happening there, right? See, if you look at the jersey, the brother has done her name, and if you
Yes.
notice, no one forced him to put a Singapore
I
flag
know.
there.
Exactly.
They could have just put the Indian
Yeah,
logo, and
that's
then-
right.
but they
Sure,
put a Singapore logo, and if you
Yes,
look at the
right
name
there.
of it, Singapore Indian Cricket Club or something
Exactly,
like that. So
exactly.
which there's already integration there.
That's
Why,
true.
where the problem arises is when we try to in a scholastic manner what is integration and
Yes.
everything.
Mm.
When we try to compartmentalize and say that this is the definition of integration,
Yeah.
that's where we come into a roadblock. I
Hmm.
guess we just leave it to be organic, and it's happening. We see days and days of newspaper reporting where a construction brother stops someone to help someone. You see a sister helping and everything. So volunteerism, reintegration is all organic. It needs to come from the
Absolutely.
heart. The moment we try to use it, the hate part of it, that's where the conflict comes.
Correct.
And I think we need to give them platform, people to volunteer. And then we say that there are opportunities. Alicia volunteering in Cinder, that's a fantastic
That's
story. And
inspiration for
that
you.
is the Singapore story, you see. And
Yes.
everybody can write this Singapore story, regardless of whether they have been here for 10 years, 20 years, or born here. It's our own free will to write the chapter.
Amazing.
That
That
is
is
I
so
love that.
true.
Yeah.
I'm going to move to Dr. Wan. Dr. Wan, you've been very quiet, and I want to know what your pearls of wisdom are. When people move to Singapore or the residents of Singapore, how do they really integrate the way they should?
Well, I have a lot of tips. I spent a whole lifetime talking about it.
Yeah.
How much time do you have for me? I think the biggest thing that we need to remember is that we are all here sharing a common humanity.
Yes.
It doesn't matter who you are, what position in life, where you come from, your language, religion.
True.
It matters not, because when we boil it all down, we are a common humanity. But we also need to remember that because of humanity, we are also human.
Hmm.
So we are liable to be prejudicial, liable to stereotyping, liable to be, I don't like you because you don't look like me.
Yeah.
So once we have that consciousness that we are a common humanity, be less superficial and more willing to communicate and share with each other and learn from each other, I think we are good. Although we're talking about organic, I think there is also a little bit of effort,
Yeah.
if we can, on organizationally speaking, to nudge people a little bit, to encourage them a bit more, so that we can actually get people to come together. It is the coming together like this
Yes.
that we learn from each other, and we can overcome all the stereotyping, all the prejudices, and truly experience harmony.
Wow. He's done my job, guys. But you know what? And added to that, while we appreciate and be sensitive, I think added to that, a gift to somebody always works.
Yeah.
Yes.
The laddus,
Yes.
of course.
The laddus work, the invitations work, they all work. You're right.
Yeah.
But then, okay, I'll start, and I'm expecting a gift from each one of you. All right? So the first thing is that you all go back with something.
Beautiful.
All right.
Very
Thank
nice.
you. That
Yeah.
was so fast.
It is, and that's why you're not getting this today. It'll be done up in a much formal way.
Okay.
But this is just a sample.
Thank you.
All right. And that's not enough. We have chickpeas to cook coming to everybody here right on the panel. Well, that's what you get for being on my panel. Thank you so much,
Thank
Nilanjana.
you.
This
Thank
is
you.
beautiful.
Thank you, Nila.
Thank you. I'm so looking
Thank you so
forward
much,
to it.
Nilanjana.
Dhanyavad.
Dhanyavad, Cecily. You know what? I started to read it.
Thank
And I
you.
haven't finished. And I'm going to grab another copy and read one.
Okay.
And that's not
Lovely.
enough, guys. You are also eligible to get something very special from our gift sponsors. That's
Wow.
healthy.
Oh.
And what's inside this? This is a Singapore-based startup, and it's the world's first turmeric-based mints.
Ooh.
And they don't stain your teeth.
Yeah.
Wow.
They're definitely a merge between being healthy with haldi.
Wow.
Wow.
And what's haldi?
That's
Just
lovely.
turmeric.
See what you did there.
Exactly. So you're going to grab this, and of
Lovely.
course, I would love to
Thank
see
you.
the men walk out with one of these. I'm waiting to
There
see
you
that
are.
side.
Thank you.
You are most welcome. So this is what we do. We integrate not only the entrepreneurial ventures of Singapore, but also our beautiful panelists here. So I have to thank each one of you for
Most
being here on
welcome.
this show today. Thank you so
Thank
much.
Thank you
you.
so
Thank
much.
you.
It's
It's
been
been
such a
fun.
pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
It's been fun, and
Yeah.
it's had a lot of beautiful words and pearls of wisdom, as I call them. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure hosting you today.
Thank you,
Thanks for having
Renuka.
us.
All
you.
right, and on that note, guys, I have to tell you that this is the end of this beautiful, beautiful episode of Montage of Singapore Season 2. I told you, we're going to have some amazing individual stories. They're going to inspire you, and they're going to be sharing their one Singapore story and how they make Singapore absolutely unique, isn't it? Till we meet again, this is Renuka saying goodbye from the sets of Montage of Singapore Season 2, proudly brought to you by Masti Media Network and supported by the National Integration Council. Hey, don't go anywhere. We end every episode of the Montage of Singapore Season 2 in a very unique way. So right now, you're going to be listening and watching the calm and serene Chinese pipa being played by none other than Ika Kairia.